gives you a detailed outline of how you should eat.
Plate, which is the normal dinner plate size.
You're not forward on those toes, you're back on your heels.
Hello, I'm Robert Santos-Prouse.
And I'm Courtney Crackle.
And we are senior nutrition students here at ETSU. Today we're going to talk to you about sticker shock, how to read nutrition labels. So first we'd like to give you a little bit of history about nutrition labels. They first appeared on foods in 1986. They are required for almost all prepared foods. So if you see a nutrition label on something, it means that it has been processed in some way. They are voluntary for raw produce and for fish. So those items do not have to have labels. And the labeling requirements are different for supplements like ginkgo biloba, vitamin C, any of your multivitamins. Those are actually regulated by a different agency than the agency that regulates your food labeling.
So the main important thing that we want to try and convey with nutrition labels is that when we start using them, studies have shown that people who have started using nutrition labels are able to consume lower fat diets and are able to consume higher amounts of fiber and iron in their daily diets.
So these next two slides our friends over in the public health department made. Thank you. So this is an example of a typical nutrition label, and we're going to talk about a few different categories on it. First, I would like to mention the serving size, and in my opinion this is the most important thing on a nutrition label because the serving size gives you an indication about what the rest of the label is telling you. So for example, this serving size of this macaroni and cheese is 3/4 of a cup, but there are 4 servings in the container. So the label information is in reference to 3/4 of a cup, not the entire box. The next thing you need to look for is your total fat, and again that's per serving. You want to look for something with less total fat. And fiber is an important thing. You need a lot of fiber in your diet, so look for something that's a little bit higher in dietary fiber. You can see this has 0 grams, so maybe not the best choice for your fiber needs. And then sugar is something you should look for to keep kind of low. You want to look for less sugar. And more protein. Everything that we are is made of protein, from your nails to your hair to your flesh. All of it is protein, so you need protein in your diet. So you're going to look for stuff that's higher in protein. Also helps you feel fuller throughout the day. And then finally you want to look for something that is less than 1/3 of your total calories from fat. And most nutrition labels have that labeled on there right beside the total calories, so that's kind of easy to find. Just look for the number that's from fat and then divide that by your total calories, and that'll tell you if it's more or less than 1/3. I want to talk about the percentages. These are based on a 2,000 calorie diet. So these percentages are for an individual who consumes 2,000 calories in a day. That is a very specific number, and not very many of us eat specifically 2,000 calories in a day. So it's actually easier to ignore the percentages and just look for general reference based on the numbers. And of course, the ingredients will always be listed on your nutrition labels.
A few things to look for in your ingredients is it more than 5? When you're looking at something that has more than 5 ingredients, you're looking at something that's been more heavily processed and is not in a more natural form. Something that you might want to consider when looking at maybe your processed green beans compared to your frozen green beans. Another thing is when it's on the ingredient label, the higher amounts it is in the package is the more likely it is to be towards the front. In this case, since we were studying macaroni, the enriched macaroni is closer to the front, meaning it is the most prominent ingredient in your box. Another thing that is my personal thing is if I can't pronounce it, I usually don't want to eat it. So that goes back to our whole processed versus natural.
All right, so as I mentioned earlier, serving size is probably the most important thing on your nutrition label. It will be the first thing listed on the label, and it will be in the upper left-hand corner. The important things to look for with the serving size is that, for instance, on this one, the serving size is 1/2 a cup, but if you eat more or less than 1/2 a cup, you need to be aware that the information listed on your nutrient label is referring to 1/2 a cup. So if you eat this entire can, you actually need to multiply everything listed by 3 1/2. So the thing to watch for serving size is that it is the amount that the nutrition label is referring to.
In our daily diets, we need fat. It's a fact of life, unfortunately. Not a lot of us want to think about it, but the USDA has set a recommended daily amount of 30% of our total intake. Fats come in several forms: saturated, trans, monounsaturated, and polyunsaturated. Very technical terms that just mean the more unsaturated it is, the better it is for us. Those are omega-3s and our omega-6s. The saturated is fattier, things that we want to try and limit in our diet, and it is put on our nutrition labels. Trans fats has been publicized in the media lately as being very negative for us, and that is true. It can be found in our nutrition labels if it is in the product. This can be seen in our baked goods and our highly processed foods, and it's stuff that we really do not want in our diet. Fortunately for us, fats can be found in almost all food sources, so there is no getting away from it. But reading the nutrition label can definitely help you lower your amounts of it, and especially lower the amounts of your saturated fats.
We touched on carbohydrates a little bit earlier when we said that you need to look for something with more fiber and less sugar, and both of those categories combine to make up carbohydrate. A carbohydrate is fiber and sugar. So the USDA says that you need to get 60% of your total calories in a day from carbohydrates. And what that means for men 19 to 30 is that you should be trying to get about 38 grams per day. And for women 19 to 30, you should be trying to get 25 grams per day. Now we usually don't get that much, so this is something that it would be good to watch for and try to increase. We will talk about some sources of carbohydrates a little bit later.
Another important nutrient that we want to point out on the nutrition label is sodium. The USDA says that the recommended dietary allowance of sodium is 1,500 to 2,300 milligrams per day. However, the average American is consuming 3,300 milligrams per day before adding table salt. This is very high and very alarming, especially with the facts that high blood pressure, heart disease, and other disastrous cardiovascular diseases are on the rise in the American public today. Sodium is found in almost all food sources. It can be found in our canned vegetables, our frozen vegetables, our breads, and other important items that we need to consume. The best ways we've found to lower our sodium intake is to just really read your nutrition label. How much sodium is in that per serving? And if you're going to consume the whole container, please make sure that you multiply it by the servings of the container. Another important thing that we've learned is taste your food at the table before adding salt to it. You could be adding more salt and actually making your food taste really bad. And another thing, when you're preparing your food, try and add different things other than salt products. If you're wanting a garlicky taste, add garlic powder, not garlic salt. Same thing with onions and things along those lines. Here are some examples of how much sodium is found in various products. Take, for instance, your frozen vegetables. They're a more natural food source, so they're going to have a lower amount of sodium per serving or per bag. Your bread is also lower, and depending upon who makes it and what type it is, you're going to have a lower amount of sodium. But please be aware, some manufacturers say it's one slice per serving, and for instance, for those of us who like sandwiches, we're getting 2. So please make sure that you add another slice into your serving.
So these are some processed sources of carbohydrates. We're focusing on sugars for this one. As you can see, we have 3 different kinds of common drinks that are pretty much a daily occurrence for us college students. We have Coca-Cola, 3 different sizes. We have a can, a 16 ounce and a 20 ounce. And then we have a tall Starbucks, I believe it's a mocha, frappa, quadra, chino, coffee, espresso, latte. I think that's right, yeah. And then we also have a McDonald's sweet tea. As you can see, there's quite a bit of sugar in all of these different drinks. And that's fairly common for all of our canned and processed drinks. And we added in a slide about natural sources of sugar because we want you to remember that you do get sugar from natural sources. The examples we've got are 1 apple, 1 banana, and 1 orange. And as you can see, the amounts of sugar in those fruits is much lower than the processed forms that we showed you earlier. Another important thing to remember about natural versus processed is with the natural, your sugar is combined with the fiber to make a total carbohydrate, whereas in your processed, especially your drinks, it's refined added sugars, so you're only getting sugars. You're not getting any other nutrients. Okay. So attached along with the video, we have a handout for you to help reiterate the things that we've been talking about and to test your knowledge, see if you learned anything from us. The handout is 2 pages. The first page just reiterates what we've been talking about, gives you a quick breakdown of the different parts of the nutrition label. And the second page is a little quiz for you. Yeah, that's right. There will be a test. So, let's go through it really quickly. The first one asks you how many servings are in package A. So take a moment and look, see if you can find the answer to how many servings are in package A. If you said that there are 10 servings per container, that is correct. And again, that's important because it means that all of the information on the nutrition label you need to multiply by 10 if you eat the entire container. So how much total fat is in package A? If you said that there are 2 grams of total fat in package A, you got the right idea, but you stopped a little bit short. There are 2 grams in 1 serving of package A, and you need to multiply that by 10 to determine the total fat in the package. So there are actually 20 grams of total fat in package A. Now, which food is lower in total fat? The food in package A or the food in package B? If you said package B, that's right. You can see that package A has 2 grams of total fat per serving, while package B has 1 gram of total fat per serving, but they have the same amount of servings per box. So multiplying both of those numbers by 10 will give you 20 grams in package A and 10 grams in package B. And finally, which food has more fiber? The food in package A or the food in package B? If you said that these foods have the same amount of fiber, you are correct. As you can see, there is 1 gram of fiber per serving in both of the containers, and both of the containers have the same amount of total servings. So there are 10 grams of total fiber in both packages.
So our final thought that we want to leave you with is a call to action. The next time that you go to the grocery store, we want you to look at your nutrition labels. We want you to see exactly what you're buying. Compare it with your processed foods with a more natural food source. Or take, for instance, something that might not be in season that's fresh, like green beans, and see how much sodium or how much of the processed food is in the canned versus your frozen vegetables, which are just as healthy when you don't add all of the sauces.
Hopefully we've given you the tools to demystify those nutrient labels. And though reading them may feel like Stats 101, breaking them down makes it a lot more manageable. And it is a very important skill when you're buying processed foods. So please, when you're in the gas stations, the grocery stores, check those nutrient labels.